Data breaches seem to be in the news more and more these days. With AI infiltrating our lives by way of everything from computers, support chatbots, to the smartphones in our hands, it's easy to feel like no one is looking out for us as students, customers, and patients. Fortunately, my friend Elaina Mayer has our backs. As a Certified Information Systems Security Professional, or CISSP, for Temple Health in Philadelphia, Elaina is a leader in the organization's efforts to ensure the safety and security of the data stored by its many institutions and facilities. As a professor, she takes the shaping of the next generation of cyber warriors very seriously, finding new and innovative ways to challenge them in class so they're ready for the real world. Having known her since we were both in college marching band together, I can tell you firsthand this has always been the case. But just like anyone else, her life has had bumps along the road and challenges she's had to overcome to get to where she is today. Where is that? Oh, just well on her way to being a Chief Information Security Officer before she's 40. That's not normal, in case you're wondering. In this episode, you'll hear all about her career path and learn a thing or two about data science and cybersecurity. But you'll also learn about some of her side quests, which include, but are not limited to, being a top-selling fantasy author on Kindle, an award-winning cosplay artist, and TikTok celebrity. You know, casual stuff like that. So lace up your bodice, don your chainmail, and prepare yourself for cyber battle. Well, maybe not. But you're definitely in for a super fun and illuminating conversation with Elaina Mayer here on Blue Collar, White Coat. Elaina, welcome to Blue Collar, White Coat. I'm so excited to have you and hear more about your story. We haven't talked in so long.
I know, and I look back and I'm like, we met in 2008? It's been a while.
Yeah, we're like kind of grown up, sort of, on paper
now.
It's
crazy that so much has changed, and at the same time, nothing has changed at all.
Yeah, that's why I felt okay about tapping you for this. I was like, there's just that kind of we were both in marching bands, you know, like I don't know, felt like a safe space here to just like tap you randomly and be like, hey, tell me your story.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I'm so excited. So I guess talk a little bit about what you do now, and then we'll kind of work back from there and talk about how you got here.
So I actually just accepted a new position. I'm on week 4 of it. You may have seen it over on LinkedIn, but I'm now leading cybersecurity operations for Temple University Health Systems. Temple University split from their entire healthcare division and their university side. So I've got 9 hospitals at 7 sites and like 28 clinics that I'm trying to architect and redesign and protect and make sure that we don't end up on the front page. And if you've kept it like up with any of the cybersecurity news, healthcare is a major threat vector and target for international advanced persistent threats, or APTs, that just want to get as much money and as much data as they can.
Yeah, just personal data, I guess. And this is something that like I'm definitely interested to learn from you on, because it's not my wheelhouse necessarily. I work on the kind of other end of the spectrum with defense, so I know a little bit about some of the precautions and some of the, you know, like you said, systems and things that are being developed, especially in the age of AI, to kind of like at least keep pace with, if not get ahead. So in terms of like people's health records and personal information, that seems like pretty relevant right now, especially.
Yeah, and people don't realize it, but there's so many, not just data types there, but there are different legislative frameworks. So you don't just have the healthcare records and the PHI, which is your personal health identifiers. You have your electronic medical records that have their own legislative framework. You have PCI DSS with all the credit card and processing. Depending on if we have any work overseas, we now have to do GDPR, Sarbanes-Oxley. So there's just like so many different laws that we have to follow, and each one of those covers just like a small subset of the data that we manage. And then when you take that and you look at it as it's not just a hospital, like we've got a cutting edge international cancer research center. We have a university with students and professors and researchers, and then we have a hospital as well. So now you have 3 completely unique environments all under one roof that all have 3 different sets of completely diverse requirements and then different work needs. Like we don't want a machine that is in the ER reaching out to the internet, but researchers have to have internet access. So how do you microsegment and manage data flowing across your enterprise? Is you just have to know how to architect it based on the information and not just the hardware and the physical devices.
Wow, that's I can't fathom that. And I want to come back to when we get back into, what it is you do day to day. I definitely want to slow down and get some acronyms cleared up. And I love the use of the word architect because it's not what people might think of traditionally, and yet it is. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I guess like I remember in undergrad 1,006 years ago, this was like already your track. You were already very much looking into cybersecurity and IT. And I remember at that time being like, cybersecurity, is it like a bouncer that sits next to your computer? Because it just like wasn't like for people like you who are tapped in, it was very much something that was a concern. And I remember you even talking about like, yeah, job security, and like, me, I was like, I'm gonna be a dolphin trainer. I was not on the same same level at all. But so you've been into this for a long time. How did you even get into cybersecurity?
So I had never really thought about cyber, but I was a very intuitive and creative problem solver growing up. I loved taking things apart. And when we had like the Hotmail and AOL days, back when you like would go to Best Buy and get the discs, uh, I had a bunch of friends who just couldn't figure out, like they would lose their passwords and things, and there really wasn't a process for password recoveries. There was no 2FA. That concept wasn't even around at the time. So I started figuring out how to do cross-site scripting attacks and breaking into front-end databases and back-end databases to recover passwords. And
Wow.
my original goal was to do aerospace engineering and astrophysics. And I had an injury that um, I complained about it all the time in undergrad when I had knee surgery. And they were like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're never going to go to space. So I pivoted and went into cyber. And I hate admitting to being a Nepo baby, but when one of your parents runs part of cybercom, it's really easy to get a government clearance and go to work at the
Right.
agency. So it was just kind of well, you've got this thing and there's an opportunity. And I hadn't even honestly thought about Towson until Dr. Lazar pinged me. And there are only, I think, 6 of us with that degree that I actually have from Towson. And it was the test run for the degree that is now the Information Security Engineering program. But
Wow, I
my
didn't know that.
yeah, my diploma is actually the Bachelor of Technical and Professional Studies and Information System Security Engineering. And there's only 6 of us that have that.
That's a mouthful. Good thing that that's not on a business card because they
Yeah.
that wow.
So it's funny because like there's not even a way for us to like say what we do because most systems don't even know that that degree is like a possible thing.
Wow.
So it's like I just have a BS in cyber or a BS in
Yeah.
computer science is what I tell people because trying to
Yeah.
explain what that whole program was is just a pain.
That's so cool. And I relate on a very, distant level on account of like I had to go to the UK to find a degree path in science communications because that was just not a thing. Like people were like, "Oh, you want to be a science writer?" And it's like, "No, I mean, I can do that, but no, like it wasn't a thing." And now that like 6 years later, several like Cornell has a science communications program. Vanderbilt does. Like there's quite a few programs out there, and it's cool to see the field developing, especially like having been one of the folks to surf that first wave. I'm
Mhm.
sure that feels pretty cool. It has to
It's
be like I picked the right thing. Like look at this.
yeah, and it's so crazy to look at like I was on the collegiate cyber defense team for Towson, and now I'm on the red team that goes and attacks Towson's new team. And it's just kind of gone full circle with being able to look at the growth of that program and then being adjunct faculty at Maryland and Monmouth. It's really unique to see how we've just evolved the entire field of cyber from it not even being something that you understand or there wasn't a lot of depth to it because nobody knew.
Yeah,
And you just have to take it day by day. And I think one of the challenges to cyber education is that it advances so fast that a lot of programs can't keep up with it. And then you have issues which honestly, the entire reason I became a professor was because I had a group of interns from Monmouth who were completely honestly useless. And I told Jamie Crush, who was the director and associate dean of sciences for computer science, that I couldn't use for students because they didn't have any of the skills that I needed in cyber.
Mm.
And we got to looking at why that happens. And a lot of these colleges have amazing professors, but they're tenured instructors. They haven't been in the field since the 90s, early 2000s. And if you think about it, like if you were born before 1998, you're older than Google. I know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you've got people who haven't been in the field since pre-Google, it's hard to teach relevancy and then have students come out of university with relevancy and a relevant skill set that'll allow them to stay on the edge of what we're doing in the field.
That's really interesting. And I think there's a huge conversation there that I would love to delve into at some point about academia, because one of the big reasons I started this podcast was because there is this kind of lingering, I don't want to call it a myth, but there's a prejudice about like the academic elite, and like they look down their nose at anyone who is doing things differently or doesn't have a degree or where they got their degree from. And I think we were talking before we hit the record button. I think those people do exist. I think we've probably both encountered those people, but I think our generation especially is really starting to take a look at things like, okay, you've been here for a long time, but how are you staying relevant? How are you keeping your finger on the pulse of not just what's going on, but how it's evolving, and how are you evolving with it? So I think that could be said like across the board, but for things like cyber, especially in the last few years with AI, like bombarding the scene, I can't even imagine how fast you're having to move.
The amount of time that we spend just doing AI research because our adversaries are moving faster than us. And it's frustrating sometimes when we look at the amount of hoops that we have to go through to protect something. And we have frameworks, for example, like ENAC, for example, is a big one where it is a structured audit that says, yes, my environment is secure. The problem is that all of the controls of ENAC are all public knowledge. So if you're ENAC certified, now an adversary says, okay, well, I know that these 26 requirements have been met by my target. And most chances are it's only those 26 and nothing above that, because a lot of environments just want to pass the audit.
Yeah. Yeah. To say, hey, we've checked all our boxes
to
our stakeholders, to our customers, to our patients, whatever, like, look what we did. Here's our report card. It's, I don't want to say bare minimum, but I guess it is bare minimum. They're not packaging like that. They're saying, yeah, look, we've done all the things we're supposed to do. Interesting. Wow. And I guess I'm definitely interested to learn more about red teaming. I just learned about that myself. I at work am doing a YouTube video all about something that the institution is working on in terms of security and kind of guardrails for LLMs, for large language models like ChatGPT. Obviously, you know what these things are, but I'm trying to be good about not being one of those acronym people. But large language models like ChatGPT, and there's a million others. Google, I think, has one now. I forget what it's called.
Google
Grok
AI
on Twitter, like all of those things. And it's something that people are, largely using for good and taking my work away from me in some cases, but at the same time, it's helping. But a lot of folks haven't thought, fortunately, a lot of folks haven't thought about the darker side of things like large language models, where you could ask ChatGPT for help with just about anything, and there's not going to be a whole lot of flags or warnings. And that's not true now. It's changing, but it has to evolve. Like you said, our adversaries, just the bad guys in the world, are figuring this out way faster than the good guys are.
And we could spend like literally whiteboard workshops just talking about AI and how it works. But if you think about the core of what AI is, if you put a person in a room and you give them all English books or all French books, anything that they produce is going to be in English or it's going to be in French, because that's the only relevant knowledge it has to pull from. So what we're seeing now is people taking large data sets of a specific expertise and creating a GPT instance in the cloud, and they're training that LLM, that like model. Instead of giving it access to the entire internet, they're feeding it specific documentation. And one of the things we're seeing is this being abused in the author community and the writing community and the fantasy community, where people are saying, I'm going to feed all 106 of Stephen King's books into this model, and just use his model to train a Stephen King model. Now, I would like you to write me a book with these requirements, this word count, here's the plot points, page by page. And it'll do that. And if you go and compare,
in the style of Stephen King, with like his
yeah,
language, his metaphor use, his like feel. Because I just want to make sure that we're not losing anybody when we talk about this kind of thing. But continue, yeah. So,
but that's exactly it. Like you are able to almost word for word replicate what an author can do. And like over the last couple of years, I would joke I became an accidental Amazon bestseller for fantasy books, and I used this model to do just for testing validation, where I uploaded all of my books that I'd written, and then I said, I need you to write this scene with these characters, and I went and wrote it, and then I looked at what AI had wrote, and it was almost identical to what I would have done, and that's terrifying.
Because it's not just the words; it's the thinking. I don't have the language for it, but it's the processes that your brain takes. Like, do I want to make his jacket blue or red, or why would I choose red? Well, because in this scene I want to foreshadow, and like it's not just taking the surface level, style.
There's a targeted specificity to the content.
Yeah.
Which is fascinatingly horrifying.
Yeah. And so take that, like it's really bad that it's happening to artists and writers and in the creative circles, because historically no one sticks up for those folks, us creative folks. It's just part of society or whatever justification it is. But those same tactics are being applied to much more sinister, I don't want to say more sinister because it's still bad, but like things that could hurt people in physical ways and financial ways and whatever else. So it's I have to like go watch Adventure Time or something after we talk about all this, because it's a little heavy. But yeah, and this is why I wanted to talk to you, because you're one of the real people out here, like making sure that we have as much protection as we can, or we're forecasting the things that could happen and creating those guardrails, creating those I don't know, safety measures.
I don't think people have the insight into what like a security operation looks like. And it's not just a bunch of guys sitting in front of massive screens. Yeah, those are great. The war rooms are awesome. The fusion centers are great.
With the timeline that's shrinking and the like Jurassic Park hacker scenario. No, it's not like that. Dang.
No. Some places it still is like that.
Yeah.
And you've got systems from like the 90s that are still running key critical processes and systems that have just never been updated. And you see that a lot in old finance and in healthcare, because healthcare has this thing where there's a critical clinical care and you can't mess with something if someone will die. So they have just accepted that there's not a lot of forward innovation with their technology. And it's kind of reached this unique breaking point where they don't have a choice now, because the systems are so old that, for example, we're seeing in several different hospitals a system that was sunset in like the 90s, for example, when I was at my previous job doing consulting, and we noticed that there are specific servers that do specific things that aren't even medical related, but they have a connection into medical data. And those systems running off of a Microsoft platform, like we're on Windows 11, Windows 12, we'll be on Windows 15, and people will still be using Windows 7 because it works. And if it works and it's not killing anybody, but it's providing a service that helps save lives, no one's going to touch it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And also there's I know a big problem among a lot of workplaces is the generational kind of the turnover, basically, as boomers and as these older generations start to retire, sometimes start to move on to the next thing. There's a lot of limitations in kind of that. Like they've had the system, they've held on to it, and now they have to not only relinquish to the next generation, but the institution or the organization has to figure out how to do that at the same time as updating technology and updating systems.
And technologic sustainment was not a big thing that people thought about back in the day. And when you look at what you just said, critical infrastructure is the biggest, weakest link in North America. When we talk infrastructure, we're talking about the energy sector. We're talking about the water systems, the power grid. We're talking about the systems that manage traffic lights and railroads and shipping lanes and all of that kind of stuff. Even the bridges that go above anyone that has a lift on it for a boat lift. All of those things are all technically infrastructure. So a bunch of these systems we're seeing were written in computer languages that are no longer used. And as of the late 90s, no longer even taught in college. So as these systems break, the amount of people who can actually fix them is getting smaller and smaller. So we're having issues that we've seen with, good example of this, we had an intelligence connector overseas that broke. It was feeding data through Alaska. And one of the only people left alive that worked on that project back during the Cold War was in a retirement home in Florida. So we went to Florida, we got him, we flew him to Alaska to fix it. And he sat down and was like, I remember this, and just went straight to work like it was yesterday.
Oh,
And I'm like,
wow.
I don't even know what coding language this is.
Wow. We're unfortunate that he was
Yeah.
able to like sit down and like kind of, I don't know, go back into gear, like find, the shifter and get into gear. That's really interesting. There's something I was going to say about, oh, I know. Recently in the news, I remember hearing that with everything that's been going on with the government, Doge going into these different government facilities. I know. I'm sorry I brought it up. I said the D word. I remember NOAA specifically being brought up as like, there are machines still running on floppy disks that have data that is still relevant. And like the Doge kids are like 20 and they walk in and they don't know how to use it. So there was a very real fear still that data could get lost because they don't know what this is. They don't know how to operate the machines. Everyone who did is now fired. And this is important, wave activity. Who knows? Satellite information.
Yeah, and a lot of these IoT devices, so everybody knows like the Internet of Things, and an IoT device basically just has a yes/no form of data where it's very minimal. It's not like you're looking at packets coming across the internet where it's source IP, destination IP, protocol, port, all of that stuff. It's just yes, no, here's what it is. So, for example, with like a temperature reader, it would be, is it on? Is it not on? What's the temperature number? And that's it. And that's the only data that it stores and keeps. So one of the challenges right now is these kids are coming in, and not only are they not qualified to be examining or reviewing a lot of these systems, and there was the NOAA incident, there was the Social Security Administration one where they were like, there are people 250 years old. Well, no, dumbass. Sorry, it's not 250 years. It's the coding language that reverts to a specific date based around what time it is. So the fact that they don't even have the intelligence or insight to critically think about, well, why is this doing this? Why are we seeing this thing? Because there's no way you're going to get 300 records that have the exact same date unless there is a coding break somewhere that makes that happen.
Yeah, it stresses me out, and I don't know as much as you do, so I can only imagine how you must be feeling with some of these headlines and some of the news stories. Like,
half of them, I just shake my head.
Yeah. I mean, I'm choosing optimism, and I'm choosing to think that, when this hopefully blows over, like we are laying the groundwork for hopefully whole new systems and a whole new approach to a lot of things, I hope. So,
yeah. And we're at that time, right? There was this really great model of sociology where you look at human civilization. It's like a 250-year cycle. And we're right on the edge of that 250 years. So it's time for a refresh.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. What's a computer? I'm like a Control-Alt-Delete. I don't know. A hard reboot. I'm not sure what the metaphor is there, but
turn it off and turn it back on.
Yeah. Is it plugged in? I think we've been unplugged for a while now, and someone needs to plug us back in. So on autopilot or something. But Yeah, okay. So let's go back to you did your bachelor's. Did you ever end up doing grad school or have like I know there's always like certificates involved because of the
Mhm.
like continuing education. Like what was your path after bachelor's?
So I graduated. Um, Actually, I guess we graduated together
Kinda. I just
ish.
stopped going. Because that's for another podcast. But yeah, I was like, you're saying that I didn't take a class that I took and I need another credit to graduate. I have a paying job. What am I gonna do here in my
Yeah.
field? Like, see you later. So I went back and finished like the literally two classes in like 2016. But yeah, so about the same time, yes, you finished and I stopped going.
So I did that one, and then I took 2 weeks off and started my master's. So when I did my master's in
Wow,
cybersecurity and policy, and then I took a week off and did my MBA, and then I took a week off and started my PhD.
this is like
Um,
for the listeners. Alina's not kidding when she says these things. She hasn't sat still well ever in her life, and this is how she rolls.
well, I just figured I'd want to get them all out of the way, and I had no intention of doing my MBA, and they were like, you can add on 6 classes and get your MBA. And I was like, I mean, it's only 6 classes. What's the harm? May as well. But honestly, that degree has been more helpful than my
Yeah.
tech ones because the tech ones really aren't a lot of elaborate work. You're going to learn more as in the workplace than you are with your master's degree. And there are certifications that you can get that are way more valuable than having a master's. But having the MBA really allowed me to speak that corporate executive language, which
Mm-hmm.
is what helped me be a great consultant with Ernst& Young. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we're seeing this really unique thing now where we're kind of moving away from the traditional education and more into the work experience and the certifications because you can get more targeted certifications based around the domain you work in. Whereas if you go to like University of Maryland, and I really feel bad crapping on my alma mater that way because I'm a Maryland cultist through and through. But there's when you look at the Masters of Cyber, there's only so much in that program that is actually related to cyber. And cyber is such a wide range of jobs. And like you've got red team, you've got purple team, you've got blue team, you've got gray team, you've got DLP for data loss prevention, you've got IAM for identity and access management. Those are all different career fields. You've got
Wow.
analysts, engineers, all of that's in cybersecurity, but you're not going to get that in a degree because
Right.
the degree is still so heavily focused on coding and
Yeah.
process management that
There's not
you're
that applied
yeah.
experience, like hands-on experience. Wow. That's and I think like in general, again, I think our generation got sold a bill of goods about you have to go to college, you have to go to college, you have to have a degree, you have to go to college. And now I'm excited to see this kind of resurgence of like, the skilled trades. And I very much would consider like cyber and tech as a skilled trade. You're not using power
Yeah.
tools, but it has to keep up with the pace of work and not so much like you said, a degree isn't necessarily going to be helpful in that
Yeah.
case.
And
Interesting.
for example, I have the CISSP, which is the Chief Information System Security Professional certification. It's regarded as the third hardest cert in the country behind the New York and California bars.
Wow.
And the cool thing about it is you have to do 40 CPEs per year for your continuing professional education credits. If you do that for all 3 years, it renews. So you have this kind of motivation to always stay on
Yeah.
the edge of things. So you're always learning and you're always staying up to date with changing trends in the industry and new technology and emerging tech and new techniques and tactics that adversaries are using. So when I look at, is this cert as valuable as my Master's of Science? Yes. If I had to pick one, um, a lot of employers aren't going to look at my master's. They're going to see the CISSP and they're going to say that person
Yeah.
because I know they
Yeah.
have this and there's a language that they speak and understand.
Right.
And that comes back to even like looking at the requirements to get it. You have to have like 5 years of experience in X amount of domains of cyber to qualify for it.
I love that of experience, not like
Yep.
letters behind your name, not,
No.
some institution that you're associated with, but 5 years of
Yeah.
experience. Cool.
And as a college professor with a bunch of letters after my name, none of that really matters. It's
Yeah.
just pretentious dick swinging at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm glad to hear you say that as a professor, because that's one of the things that I'm hoping to kind of, you know, address with this podcast. Like it's real world experience. It's being a human that cares about other people. And, the professor title, sure, is in there
Yeah.
too. Let's talk a little bit. I was so clearly you did not shy away from school. You excelled at school. It was never really like a weak point or something that like you were, not confident about. Whereas I was like opposite end of the spectrum.
I'm going to be completely honest. I was horrible. Like, I was good at getting grades. I was horrible
Yeah.
at showing up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yes, I feel like there's a spectrum. It's either like you're just bad and you don't show up, you're good, you're always there, or you're a special person in the middle that's like,
Yeah.
I got this,
And
I don't have to be there.
whoever decided to put a bar in the computer science building, curse that
Oh.
man.
Oh wow. Yeah, I guess like I want to talk about that specifically because I think there's also this uh, you know, kind of I don't want to say stigma, but like assumption that if you have letters behind your name, you're a professor, you work in STEM, that you are the whiz kid, you were in all AP classes and even not going all the time and maybe being a little bit of a character in class. But yeah, for me it was tough because I was like undiagnosed ADHD for most of my school time. I just straight up was not having good time in school. And so it's hard, that follows you through your whole career sometimes too. Like I'll definitely have days where I'm like, I'm not smart enough for this. And my sister's like, you've interviewed with NASA. And I'm like, shut up. Like
Yeah.
there's just, it follows you your whole life through. And I think the imposter syndrome for academics is really, really crippling sometimes. And
Oh, yeah.
maybe even a root cause of why science, like one of many root causes, why science is so bad at talking to everyday people is because there's this like, I'm not actually good at this. I'm not actually in charge. I'm not actually an expert kind of feeling.
And I think one of the cool things that I've noticed is we see like the people that we look up to in science and tech, they feel so unreachable and unattainable. And then like I was talking to a CISO, and I realized I've got more experience, one more degree, and the same certification as this guy. So why is it different?
I don't know who that is. Sorry. Who's?
Yeah, CISO is the Chief Information Security Officer. So he's in the C-suite.
Oh.
So yep, you've got your
Gotcha.
CEO, your CFO, your CIO, and then your CISO, which has really emerged since like the early 2000s
Yeah.
as the key cyber person who directs the entire security ladder. And it goes back to, I remember having a conversation with one of my professors in undergrad, and he said, your job is not to be like us. It is to be our replacement. Because the way we admire and strive to be like them, one day, without even realizing it, we are them. And now we've got other people now looking at us as the next generation of leaders in the space, where it's like,
yeah.
And I did a talk with Splunk a couple months ago and realized it wasn't that long. It feels like forever ago, but I was sitting there listening to someone like me speak. And now I'm the one that's doing all of this. And there's a responsibility that I think a lot of us have that have experienced that and have got to this point where we can't wait on the older generation and the people who inspired us to keep inspiring, because they're old and they're tired. And even though we're not old, we're still tired.
We're still tired. This is true.
But the environment has changed, and it's now our environment, and it's now our systems and our networks and our corporate enterprises that we are now in charge of protecting.
Even cultures, even corporate cultures are like professional cultures. And yeah, having just turned 40 a few months ago, I'm feeling this on a very real level right now. But you're right. Yeah. And it's so funny because I remember something, I want to say it was Mr. Malaskis that said this, former and esteemed band director at Towson University. He said, all those older folks in the band, the ones that you look up to and you think they're so funny and, whatever, like you're going to be them next year.
Mhm.
So you got to start thinking about, how you want to be kind of perceived, how you want to carry yourself, how you like, I guess how you want to be remembered, like what's your legacy going to be? And as kids in marching band, we're like, whatever, it's hot, when's lunch? But like, he's not wrong. And it does, it's a prevalent idea
Mhm.
in a lot of areas of life, for sure.
I think that one of the things that I love about John is he's inspired so many people in so many different ways. And that mantra of his of, hey, next year you're going to be a section leader, you're going to be a band leader, and the responsibility, there's nobody to fall back on. It's going to be you.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I learned from him kind of evolved into my mantra that the legacy of tomorrow is the result of what you do today.
Oh, I just got goosebumps from that. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of how I go about my professional life is if shit's going to hit the fan tomorrow, it's because I didn't do something right today or I
Yeah.
missed something today.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I want to go back to before we like get too far away from it. I want to talk about you had mentioned before some interns that just like they were not prepared. Was there like a sense of like obviously you had work to get done, but was there a sense of like I feel bad for these guys because these kids because they're not being set up for success, or like what would be your advice to one of those interns in that situation?
So what had happened after that was I got an email from Dr. Kresh, and Jamie is an amazing mentor and friend now. And she was like, "Hey, we're doing kind of like this college experience panel, and we'd like you to come in and talk about the experience working with our interns." And so I go into this thing, and I'm sitting down in front of like the entire executive staff of Monmouth University and a bunch of the professors and the students, and they get to me and they're like, "Elaina, what was your like first impression of my students?" I said, "Well, I had high hopes," and then I was disappointed, and I
Yeah.
just ripped the entire program a new one in front of their entire staff.
Wow.
And Jamie came up to me and said, "How should we fix this?" And my response back was, you have to, if you're going to keep the direction that you're going and you're going to have your North Star as this specific type of program, you have to bring in enablement for your program. You have to bring in people that specialize in one niche thing that can teach that at an expert level. And she said, "Okay, come do it." And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, you think if you say that this is going to help, you should do it." And I said, "Fine, I'll do it." And I just didn't think anything of it. And then she sent me the application, everything to come be a professor, and um, got back at me in my first class that I ever taught. She gave me computer science 104 for non-majors as a,
Oh no.
which was the most
Oh.
miserable teaching experience I ever had.
Sometimes you just need to eat some crow, as they say, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you have to like, all right, okay. That's funny. Well, I don't know. I have a question about that. Was there any time during that working with non-majors that helped you kind of appreciate people that just don't have a brain for it? Like, oh, I never would have thought of that problem before, or oh, I never would have seen that issue from that point of view. Like, was there any kind of like silver lining to that?
Yeah. And something that I think is really cool when I looked back at it was that one class kind of shaped my entire view of being a professor. I don't have books. I don't have tests. Everything that I teach now is all graduate level, but it's all things that you will actually do in the field. So the three classes that I've taught predominantly are 506, 512, and 622, which are fundamentals of network security operations, wireless penetration testing, which is your red team. So a blue team and a red team. And then the big one is a capstone one, which is enterprise system security management, where I assign you as a group of new employees in a business and you have to make a fake business. And then over the course of the semester, I'll just roll. I've got D6, D12, D20 tables for D&D that I'll just roll on. And I'm like, you're now opening a building in this environment. What are you going to do? What's your
That's so
policies? What's your
cool.
governance? What does your security look like? How are you doing your information stack? How are you migrating and managing this amount of people on these different floors? And I make them build out an entire enterprise program from the ground up.
Wow. I love the marriage of Dungeons and Dragons, like, and because it is such a like that's what it's for, is to develop these like kind of unpredictable scenarios with layers of complexity and variables that you don't know how it's going to stack up. So that's so cool. That's fun. Did the kids get into that, or the students
They
like kind
did.
of? Yeah.
And one of my favorite memories of teaching was the first year that I ran the wireless network security class. I threw a picture on the whiteboard projector straight of the college campus, and I drew grid lines over it. And I handed each of the teams a laptop, and I said, "There's a tool on here that'll scan wireless networks." And I walked over to the other whiteboard, and I just write the team names, and I said, "You've got 1 hour. Show me how many wireless networks you can find." And they were like, "What do we do?" And I said, "Field work, go."
This
And
sounds
they
ideal.
scrambled. And
Yeah, but
it was cool
that's
just
so
watching them
cool.
run in and be like, "Hey, we found this network on this IP address." And I was like, "That's a rogue access point. I wonder if our IT team knows that they're running that network there." But I basically used my students to do an entire wireless audit of the campus.
But how, and also like how much of a, like, as a person that failed math so many times, like, and I'm talking like math for house plants, like it was bad. Like, to be given an exercise where you like go out in the world and you do the thing and you come back to your professor like, hey, look, here you go. Like that must be so validating and so positive for students that are, you know, like you said, non-majors. That must have been really transformative for a lot of them.
Yeah. And I just kept thinking, especially for the ones that are on the major side, if in a year you're sitting in front of me at an interview, will I hire you?
Yeah, that's a
And
really
the answer
good.
in most times was yes. When I was at my previous job, I did a little over 350 interviews across 5 years. I hired 6 people.
Wow. But
You just
at the end of
don't
the
have the time.
day, if, well, you know, but if you're the consumer, like if I'm, I'm not invested, or I don't want to say invested, but like this isn't my wheelhouse. This is not something that I will have to worry about in terms of employment. But I'm all over the internet and I have my health insurance and whatever information registered with several providers in my area. And so like to hear you say that, that's not discouraging for me. That's like reassuring for me that you have to be that selective of the folks that are going into your field.
It's not just the selectiveness, it is I have to be able to rely on you to do your shit. I can't
Mm.
babysit and oversee and double check things. I need to be able to say, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and I know that you're going to do X, Y, and Z.
One of the things I like to talk about is, how, yes, you have a bunch of degrees, especially for folks that might be listening that didn't go to college, or, it's not that these things get handed to you. And there's real life outside of school. You might be a whiz
Mhm.
kid in the classroom, but there's real life outside of school. There's nights where, in my undergrad, I was eating sleep for dinner, and there's just kind of bumps and snags along the road. What did you like face anything? Like what was life outside of school like for you?
Terrifying. I was so far in the closet.
Mm.
And then working in the federal space as someone in the closet was super stressful. So that was like the majority of my free time was just how do I keep my head on my shoulders? Because being a child of a military officer, there's an expectation that when you're working in the same building, like if I do something, Lieutenant Colonel Baum's going to find out. If I do this right, he's never going to hear about it. If I do it wrong, I will have a text from him within 30 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And it's not like the job was something that didn't have a lot on the line because it's cybercom. So it was real time protection of major federal assets for a government agency. And looking at the stress level of upkeeping that, plus the internships, plus school, and then I tried to pick one thing for me that I would love to do, and that was band. And that
Yeah.
was what like the socializing with band made me be social and get out and meet people and make friends. And I honestly can say that marching band is what helped me survive my undergrad experience. Like if it hadn't been for that and the brothers and sisters, I probably would have been a recluse and just gone to class, got straight A's, gone to the workforce, and never said a word to anybody.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder how many people that's the case for. And I had no idea. Like, I would have had no idea because you were so social and so funny and bubbly and like, interjecting and like leading the charge on so much stuff that um you just don't know really what
Mhm.
people are going through. And I think especially the outside world that isn't familiar with folks who go to college necessarily, or they just chose a different route. It's very easy to think like, oh, you just have it made, and like, you have your degree and you sit at a desk all day and you've never had to do anything hard. And I don't want to say make a blanket statement. Not everybody who didn't go to college feels that way, but it's certainly painted that way by the media sometimes.
Mhm.
And especially with our generation in student debt. I wow, that's you just added so many layers of complexity. Yeah. Wow. And here you are on the other side of it.
And
Yay.
I think I want to make this of note for younger listeners who might be listening to this right now. But everyone wants to be at the top of the food chain. Everyone wants to be the CEO or the CISO or the CIO, and they want that job. And they want to sit up there and they're like, I'm going to make millions of dollars. And I'm going to do this. But once you get there, nobody talks about the upkeep or the day-to-day work or the grind that you have to do. And I
Pretty
didn't
lonely
become
too.
a director of cyber by just graduating. Am I on slate to be a CISO at 40 years old? Absolutely, which is still super young and crazy. Um, but I've also been in the field for 15 years. And you're not, just because you graduate, you're not going to be graduating and then be a manager or a
Yep.
director. And there is, you're going to graduate and you're going to meet people who don't have a degree, but they have passion for it.
Yep.
And one of the things that I looked for as a hiring manager for our division was I need people who are curious and where cyber is their lifestyle, where it is not
Interesting.
something that you come to work and you go home. You're not here for a paycheck. Because cyber is changing every minute, are you keeping up with trends? Are you managing media? Do you have a home lab that you play around with? Like I've got a malware box across the room that I just download emerging malware and blow it up and see what it does and how to reverse engineer it and then see if I can apply specific things. I create the signatures for them and then match them to signatures we're seeing for internal traffic to make sure we're not seeing any or missing anything.
Yeah.
And there's just a level of, I think, passion in STEM that the people who are truly successful in STEM are the ones who really love it. It's not just the people, and you see this with cyber and IT where people are like, well, that's a lot of money. I'm going to go do that because it pays well. Does it pay well?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you're going to be miserable
Yeah.
because you don't really want to do it.
Yeah. I think especially with the federal workers that have all been laid off, it's been heartbreaking to watch. Because a lot of them are probably our generation, who just recently got these positions and worked their butts off to get there. But not just that, like you said, not just the paycheck, the fact that these were folks that had a why at the end of the day. They had a why they were there. It was, because they, lost a loved one in a storm, or because they grew up going to national parks or never got to go to a national park as a kid or whatever. There's always a why. And I think to your point, you're not just doing that because it's fun. Like, yes, you like gadgets and you like puzzles, but there's also this, you're the institution you're working for right now. I feel like there's also a little bit of like, I want to protect people and I want to make sure that I'm a force for good in the world.
Yeah. And like we've got a world class cutting edge cancer facility. Like the Philly gene was discovered at the building I work in. There's a Nobel Prize downstairs.
Wow.
It's to be able to support and enable people to do research in a safe way where it's not going to, no one's going to hurt them. Um, that's it. That's the goal
Yeah.
is, and it's fun because it never change. Like it's just changing all the time. It's like a
Yeah.
giant pile of professional Legos, and you get to put it together over and over and over, and it's just different every single day.
That's amazing. I love that. And tying it into the research, do you have like any stories about how your efforts in particular helped, progress research or like a specific study or a specific team?
So let's wind it back to COVID. COVID happened. We're all still feeling it. It sucked.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
long. It was dark. We didn't enjoy it. Or at least,
Nope.
like, I didn't enjoy it. I'm an extrovert. Every introvert out there
Yeah.
was like, I have to stay at home and read books all day. Oh
Oh my
no, the
God.
world is ending.
And there was a hangover too that people are just starting to come out of, and I have been
Yeah.
going insane. So yes, we will bond on this at some point because yes. Anyway, extrovert to extrovert.
So we, at the core of cyber, what we are is data scientists.
Mhm.
We look at data and how information flows in a secure or a safe way across an environment, how it moves in and out, who accesses it, how it's accessed, does it go inbound, outbound, is it being exfiltrated to some foreign government? All of those things are important. But the core of that is that we understand how data is rationalized. So I took the team and I said, hey, the medical system we know is behind schedule in terms of tech innovation. Cybersecurity is not going anywhere right now. Let's pivot. And a couple cool things came out of pivoting. The first of those was a system that allowed doctors to manage real-time views into IoT devices for life-saving care. And then that evolved into incorporating initial intake treatment data so that if you came in and said, I'm having these 5 symptoms, it would calculate what are the odds of it being something, what is the expected time of taking a bed, how many beds are available. And now we can look at what is the overall ingestion of human life based around needs, requirements, and resources going into an ER. So then we took that and said, all right, well, let's say a hospital is in Annapolis or like South River, and they are on their way to Annapolis. And they're going to MedStar. Guy's got a broken leg. Well, MedStar can say, hey, I've got 2 free beds and 8 people in the ER. Hit a button, and that ambulance will get a notification that says redirect to this facility that is actually open.
Oh, wow.
So we're able to now, with a couple of the major hospital networks in Philly, with like Temple and Geisinger and Hopkins, we worked with Darren down there, and he's got an entire operations center. And Darren Lacey is brilliant. He is one of the coolest CISOs I have ever met.
Wow.
And the fact that he set up like his own NASA level command center at Hopkins is just crazy to me. But we're able to do that and increase patient care. The second one that was a pet project of mine came from what we were doing with Disney, where we were using the magic bands to track COVID inside the parks because we can calculate where people are. Yeah. So hear me out. You walk into a bathroom, it knows based on sensors on rides and through the park where you're at. And we can actually geolocate inside a park where everyone is actually at. Massive amount of data science there. Right. So if you say, I now have the symptoms of COVID, report it on the app, it can now say, I know everyone who is within an X foot radius of you.
Wow.
So I took
and
that
here's
idea.
A list of like where you were.
Yeah.
Like this bathroom,
and
this
who
ride.
else was next to you?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So now we have like you were a threat vector and we know what was your sphere of influence as you move through the park. So that was really the first time we said, what is the mix between medical data science and real-time activity and devices and that intersection there? So I took that and I created a system that is finally in testing, and I'm super excited for it, called Smarter, which is a smart ER. And what that does is that takes medical data for like Epic or Cerner, which are your 2 big electronic medical record platforms in the country. And then it combines that with all of the systems you're actually hooked up to.
Okay.
And then puts that in a QR code that a doctor can scan. So if you're in an incident like COVID or a major breakout or in a third world country where there's not a lot of protections for doctors who are seeing people with high risk illnesses, a doctor can scan that and then look at here's your name, here's all of your file data, here's the last time that you got your medications, here's what the medications were, and then match those lineups with all of your real-time medical data. So anything that you're plugged into that you get like a specific readout on, all of that is in that platform. So now a doctor, if there's a trigger, a doctor can then say, okay, well, I want to see the last 10 minutes. I want to see the last 30 minutes. And now there's a residual historic bio data that now a doctor has to look at that they wouldn't normally have access to.
Wow. That's amazing. That's we're talking about shaving minutes, if not like hours, off of people's waiting and processing time. Even the ambulance example, that person doesn't have to get taken by the ambulance to the wrong hospital and find out that it's full and then have to be, where do we go next? Like, wow.
Or get dropped off
literally
in
life-saving.
a hallway with their leg broken, not being able to be seen yet.
Oh, which happens every day in this country, for sure. Wow, that's so cool. What an amazing, like you said, pivoting, just because of extreme situation that no one had any control over. That's so amazing. Wow.
We had to pivot. Like, there was such a need for smart people to do smart things in healthcare. And we did things all the way down to, like, we flew down to North Carolina during COVID and got with the Department of Health and Human Services and built the entire monitoring platform for all of the PPE in the state. So we were getting real-time feeds from every single clinic and drive-through, Rite Aid, CVS, Walgreens, hospitals across the board, and then managing every single drop of COVID testing, COVID tests, gloves, masks, face shields, all of that stuff that came from the state. They had no way to track who was using and needing. So we ended up having to build an entire cloud cluster where we were pulling all of that data in from every single, all the way down to individual towns, and then calculating how to manage the flow of that. So we built the migratory system that takes that data that comes in from them and says, okay, well, you need X, Y, and Z to run successfully to protect for COVID. If you have X amount of tests, well, that X amount of tests requires X amount of gloves, X amount of face shields, X amount of masks. And then we were able to create their entire supply chain for COVID response and then rolled that out. I think like 11 states ended up using the system we built.
Wow. I wish that kind of story had gotten more traction during that time, because that was, I think, to me, COVID is one of the big, I don't know what the word I want to use is, but it was one of the, maybe the big axe strokes in the public's trust of science in general, because of the fumbling by the CDC of information at first and the back and forth about, you need a mask, you don't need a mask, like whatever. But the result is fields that have nothing to do with healthcare were like jumping in, scientists, researchers, just STEM people, overall engineers, folks like yourself, data scientists, were like jumping in to be like, how can we help? What can we do? Where I was working at Hopkins in the material science and engineering department, they were working on better filters for the masks, for the 90 and it was N95s then, and I think it's like KN95s now. But just like, how can we weave a better fabric? And just, it blows my mind. And maybe someday somebody will do a documentary or write a book about like all the innovation that came from COVID. And as like you said, as much as it was awful and terrible, and I'm glad that it's quote unquote over, like a lot of scientific innovation and collaboration came out of it, for sure.
And we see that with every kind of disaster, right? Like, if you look back to World War I, one of the coolest things that happened, like if you remember the beginning of World War I, people were still on horseback. And then cars got pulled in, and then someone said, well, what happens if we mount a machine gun on top of a car? Well, let's add extra armor to the sides of it so people can't get shot. And now we have tanks. Like the rate of scientific advancement has hit a point during disaster that is phenomenally just optimized, and it's efficient and it's clean because we have people who know what they're doing things. On the flip side of that coin of awesome is when you have people who are unqualified and lack experience and expertise and operational due diligence, you have things like COVID and the debacle that happened, where you have a scientific community where 10 out of 10 doctors are saying, oh God, the house is on fire. And then we have a leader saying, just because there's flames upstairs, I don't think the entire house is on fire. I think it might be you could just get away with losing a room or two, and insurance
Fire
is okay
isn't
with
real.
1 or 2. What was the house doing to deserve the fire?
Oh no. Right. True. Good analogy. I guess a question that I kind of have developed in the last couple interviews is, there are people assume things based on your introduction, and you're like, hi, I'm Elaina and this is what I do, or I'm this person at work. And even if you just give them the broad kind of like, I'm in cybersecurity, like what's a myth or like an assumption that they make about like what you do or what your work involves?
That I sit in a basement wearing a hoodie over my head and just like they literally think it's the freaking Matrix.
Oh my God. And that's like the bad guys. Everybody knows. Anyone who's ever had to do an image search for cyber attacks or security knows that that's the bad guy in the situation. Like,
Yeah.
What's like one thing that you wish everybody knew about your field?
Oh man, there are so many of those. I think that it's real normal people. And we have such a diligence about, I'm not going to say diligence, we have a healthy paranoia about cyber threats. And there are things that people don't think about, like leaving your mail in the front of your car, like in a car seat. Well, that has all of the data that I would need to compromise you and steal your identity. And there are so many ways that like what you do day to day can 5 minutes later be a cyber risk to you and your livelihood. And a lot of the people that you meet that are in cyber, most people don't think we're in cyber because we don't really talk about being in cyber unless it's like in a professional environment. But there is, I think, if you ever see someone who just feels like they're a little more on edge or diligent about things, they're probably a cybersecurity professional.
Yeah, they're probably cued into some things that not everybody is thinking about and are a big deal.
Cyber in a nutshell.
Yeah. So this is why we need people like Elaina in the world. No, now that I'm thoroughly creeped out, let's talk about fun stuff. One of the questions on here is like, what's like something that someone would be surprised to learn about you? Because the stuff you deal with is serious as a freaking heart attack and scary and complex and not getting any better in a lot of cases. So how do you balance that doom and gloom of some of your work?
There are a couple, I'm a nerd, as you know.
Yeah.
Being a hardcore social extrovert, I needed something to do over COVID, so I started writing, and that turned into a fantasy series called Dusk Critter. Book 2 got released in February. Book 3 comes out September 1st.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy because 4th is with the editor, 5 I'm writing right now, and then I've got 6 and 7 slated.
Dear George R.R. Martin, can you please take a note or 3? That's amazing. So had you like wanted to write a book before, or was this just like...
I had never thought about being an author, but I'm a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm used to storytelling and building elaborate worlds and social dynamics and creating just entire cities. And when you look at what it takes to build a city, it's not just, well, here's the city name. It's not like, here's Washington, D.C. It's here's Washington, D.C. Here are the prominent families. Here's where the marketing is. Here's where the engineering is. Here's where the different industries are. What's going on inside those industries? Where do people go? What do people like to do? What's the architecture? What's the food scene? There's so many complex layers of a society that you have to build in these fantasy worlds. And I just kind of ran with the idea, and I did an event and turned around and broke 10,000 Kindle sales. And I was like, oh,
I guess this is a thing.
And
wow.
I'm slated for 4 or 5 signing events next year, which is really exciting, and a book tour. And yeah, Working on the
Oh my
details on the book
gosh.
tour, but it's really exciting to see all of that stuff. But on the other side of that, I do two things. I love the anime stuff.
Hmm.
I've been a weeb since, I mean, I was going to Otakon and Katsucon when we were in
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm a competitive cosplayer, so I take anime characters and then build and design all of their gear and their kits, um, and now I've been
Armor and like
yeah,
I've seen you with like do you have one that's like
14-foot
feather?
animatronic wings.
Yeah, yeah, wait, yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. I didn't hallucinate that. Yes. Wow. And like
And
from the gizmos out, not like you
yeah,
bought them on something like wow.
no, and I did an entire series on TikTok just on the construction of Shahar's wings
Mm.
and how I built and architected it and even down to the programming that I use and how to write the programming for the microcontrollers. Um, but on the flip side of all of that tech side, I then went and all of that armor is actually 10-ounce hardened leather. So it's all just started in a giant roll of cowhide from Tandy's. And
Wow.
the chainmail is a little over 11,500 rings, all hand linked.
Oh my gosh.
That was a lot to do. Major shout out to the Ring Lord. If you want to, the Ring Lord is one of the only sites that you can just get bulk chainmail rings.
You went full like Peter Jackson with this. You're like hand
Mhm.
made everything. Oh man, that's so and then you gained a following from this
Yeah,
because people want to know. People are really into it and they like to build things themselves and I love that about cosplay.
I'm working on the next project right now, which is my take on a Star Wars Sith Royal, based
Oh.
around a 16th century Edo period full kimono mixed with like hyper tech wear.
Whoa.
I'm about to send you a picture. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. That's amazing. And that's when you plan to wear that? When you
I've
plan to
got
like
one piece
compete?
left, and then I'll be doing the photo shoot for it. I've got just the belt left.
Wow. And
Um,
then are you going to go to a competition or is
yep.
it just oh, that's so cool. That is
But
amazing.
I turn around, I'm like, that's the other wall. It's just cosplay awards. I'm now award-winning, multi-published. I've been in like 7 magazines for that. Um,
Wow. You're just
j-
like, yeah, casual, no big deal.
but yeah, it's between that and then I play Warhammer, and that's just a
Hmm.
tabletop miniatures game, and it is like really a wind down because there's
Mm,
you buying and collecting it is like books, and then building and painting it is a hobby, and then putting it on a table and playing it someone is a hobby. And it's nice just to like sit here, and I've got on my desk, like part of my desk is just like a little mini paint station, and I'll just sit
hmm.
here and paint miniatures while I'm in a meeting if something is stressful. Like, I'm gonna paint you for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Again, my brother, shout out Andy. You'll never watch or hear this because you're like you barely on the internet. He's getting into painting them and he'll send me pictures and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this the detail and the care, it's just so beautiful. And like you said, being able to unwind and like do something
Yeah.
with your hands physically, make something beautiful that you can then also use. That's great.
But I think one of the cool things between all of that is it really has helped me with Dungeons and Dragons. And we just had season 3, episode 1 dropped today of Empyrean Decree, and we've got this full cast of characters that we are now building a story about. And it's a live play, and people just come in and listen to us play Dungeons and Dragons. It's nuts.
That's so cool. Maybe this is like this podcast is my um kind of I don't know, backed up extrovertness spilling over because the where I work is it's a pretty serious place and the people are brilliant and they have their different ways to socialize, but they're not always my ways of socializing. And so like maybe I just needed that, connection. And I have, always been ultra online. So I will never forget scrolling TikTok and I'm scrolling and here's Elaina on my For You page. And I'm like, wait, I know her. What is happening right now? There's a million views on this video. What is going on? Like I had no idea that you had such a huge and like unbelievably supportive and lovely following on TikTok. That's just it blows my mind. I love it.
And it's a great community. And something that I love about social media is There really are two sides. There's a good and bad in everything. But the good side of it is that there is such a supportive, fun group in the cosplay community. Like you spend hours and hours and hours. And when I say hours, I mean like my wings were like 40 hours. My armor was 130 hours. My chainmail was 60 hours. And that's just construction, not even like painting or sewing or fabricating, hair and makeup, any of that.
Wow. Yeah.
So when you put all this effort into building something and creating something, and then you get on stage for the first time in front of 3,000 people, that's a lot of stress for younger people and new cosplayers.
Yeah.
So have done everything we can to support and
Yeah.
grow the cosplay community.
But I guess that old cliche, be the change you want to see in the
Even
world,
that
so.
all comes back to what John said when we were an undergrad. Like, what is our legacy?
Yeah. Shout out Velasquez. That's amazing. Well, I will definitely send me the pictures of cosplay. Send me pictures, that you want to share. We will 100% get your books and everything tagged in the show notes. Your TikTok as well, if that's okay. And I'm super, super stoked that you sat with me today. One, because again, we're terrible at actually being friends and hanging out and talking, and I moved 3,000 miles away, but also just because I knew you'd be like a perfect person to tap and talk to in terms of, STEM is for everybody. It's for everybody. And regular people are doing it, and they're doing it for the right reasons most of the time, unless they're a bad guy that you're trying to find or stop. So yeah. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Last tidbit of advice for anyone getting into the field. You can do it one day, or it can be day one, and that's your choice.
Oh, I need to write that down. That's good. Okay. Yes. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much again for joining us on Blue Collar White Coat, and I will have all the info in the show notes, and we will see you soon. Well, I wasn't exaggerating, was I? Elaina is so brilliant, insightful, and talented, and I hope you learned half as much as I did during this episode of Blue Collar White Coat. After hearing all we discussed about the multifaceted and intensive world of cybersecurity, I know I'm grateful that people like Elaina are not only out there on our side, but training future generations of the folks that will have our backs in the future. I could probably do 3 more episodes interviewing Elaina and still not have scratched the surface of everything she's involved in right now, but fortunately for you, there are tons of ways to keep tabs on what she's doing. Check the show notes for links to her books, handles for her social media, and read the companion blog to this episode on my Substack to see professional photos of her incredible cosplay. On the next episode of Blue Collar White Coat, we'll be talking to one of those federal workers you've been hearing so much about in the news. Initially going to school for pharmacology and pre-med, we were really lucky to have someone like my next guest working as a public information officer at the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, and especially during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, her time in this role came to an abrupt end, thanks to the federal reduction in force earlier this year. Tune in to learn more about the grieving process for the loss of a dream job, the incredible journey she's been on so far, and where she's headed next. In the meantime, remember to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Blue Collar White Coat Pod, find whole audio episodes on our YouTube channel at Blue Collar White Coat, and companion blogs for each episode on my Substack at Amy Wright Science. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep your safety glasses on and your mind open.